As I was examining Riley, a 17-year-old young lady with diabetes, I noticed a bed sore on her lower back. I turned to her mother and said, "Riley has a bed sore." And I'm really surprised because generally I see bed sores in individuals who have been immobilized for a prolonged period of time. Riley's mother's face froze. Her eyes widened, her lips began to quiver, and then tears started pouring down her cheeks. She took a big gulp of air and said, "Would it help you to know, Dr. Gupta, that from the minute Riley gets home from school, she goes up to her room, lays down in her bed, puts her goggles on, which unfortunately I paid for, and stays in the virtual universe for the rest of the evening, sometimes even sleeping in the virtual universe with her goggles on." That was Riley's story. Hers is just one in a series of many such encounters in my personal and professional life that led me to launch a platform to help us all ungrip devices and grip life. Devices. Wireless mobile devices. WMDs. Not weapons of mass destruction, but weapons of mass distraction. Smartphones, smartwatches, tablets, iPads, laptops, video games, TV, even though the last two are not necessarily mobile. Prior to the summer of 2020, I had little to no insight into my own behavior around my devices. What changed that summer? I delivered my sweet baby boy. Over the next several weeks, I noticed that my hand would instinctively reach for my device every time I would sit down to breastfeed my sweet boy. Something in my brain told me that it was okay for me to scroll and stare at my screen instead of looking at his sweet angelic face, or maybe even shutting my eyes for a little bit and resting. As I later found out, I was behaving this way not by accident, but by design. The attention economy is working overtime to tighten its grip on unsuspecting victims like me. I also found out that I was not alone in my observations. In my research, I have now unearthed numerous studies that document the damaging impact of device overuse on our health and well-being. I will summarize the top 4. Number 1, proneness to addiction. Repeated exposure to potentially addictive stimuli such as notifications causes compounding negative effects on the brain. Number 2, obesity. By year 2030, nearly 50% adults in the United States are projected to have clinical obesity, and device overuse has a big role to play. Excessive screen time promotes sedentary behavior, obviously, but it also decreases our satiety and promotes subconscious snacking and overeating. Number 3, sleep deficit. 9 out of 10 Americans use a technological device in the hour before bed. The more interactive the device is, the harder it is to fall asleep. 70% adolescents in the US do not get enough sleep, which then impacts their school performance and increases their risk for suicide. Number 4, depression. According to the 2021 State of Mental Health in America report, anxiety was up by 600% and depression was up by nearly 900% that year. Theoretically, we socialize using devices. Practically, a trend toward individualization has been noted in real life, the offline life. While we may be digitally connected, we are socially and emotionally disconnected. I bet you know this. I bet this evidence is not a surprise to you. I'm just articulating it. Our devices are a massive distraction. Imagine if we could work without distraction, drive without distraction, live without distraction. If we truly imagine that to be a more beautiful life, what is getting in the way? What is keeping us from being fully present, fully mindful, fully intentional? Why do we twitch for our devices every 90 seconds? The answer? Dopamine. We all know dopamine is pleasure. Dopamine is a little more complex than that. Dopamine is that sneaky neurotransmitter that is released in our brain in response to any reward-related cue. Think sugar, salt, fat, spice, I'm Indian, shopping, video games, gambling. Think notifications. Each notification is a cue for the release of dopamine in our brain that causes an intense craving to reach for our device. We reach for our device and we find a reward waiting for us in there. What is that reward? A new like, a new post, a new comment, a new email, a new text. Someone commented on our post, "You look beautiful. Your children are gorgeous. Where are you on vacation? I'm jealous." These quick hits of dopamine-driven pleasure make us feel validated. Our brain craves validation, and we keep going back for more and more and more. Over time, our brain learns to associate the positive reward with the cue. What happens next? Each time there is a cue, we can't wait for the reward. Each time there is a reward, we are looking for the next cue. This is how drugs work. The pleasures that are so readily available to us through our devices online seem to diminish the joys of the real world. A state of anhedonia develops, where our threshold for what excites us keeps rising. We want more stimulation to get the same level of kick. And then our brain turns to content that is more novel, violent, adventurous, malicious, sexual. Content developers know these secrets of our mind, and they work hard, backed by millions of dollars, to develop content that keeps us coming back for more. They have a grip on our time and attention. One might argue, well, what's wrong in all of this? This is normal, the new normal. This is how we stay connected these days. This is how we socialize these days. We as a society seem to have subconsciously normalized our relationship with our devices. Our deep, passionate, codependent, intimate relationship with a piece of metal. Along the way, we have let go of real life, meaningful connectedness. What we think is our new normal, this love affair that we have with our devices, it actually has a name. Loneliness. Our colleagues are lonely. Our children are lonely. We are lonely. Eric Schmidt, the previous CEO of Google, once said in an interview about artificial intelligence, "I don't think Siri or Alexa will kill us one night, but they might become your child's best friend." There is something I must clarify here. Our addiction is not to the device. The device is just an innocent piece of metal. The addiction is to the content that we are accessing on the device. The big question is, what can we do about it? How can we cure this unspoken addiction that impacts all ages? You can't even imagine how your life can be transformed by reclaiming your time and attention. But how do we do it? We must break the trigger loop of wireless mobile devices. We must delete the cue, curb the craving, weaken the response, and dull the reward. I have 6 quick tricks for you. Number 1. Turn off non-essential notifications, especially those red badges, the red icons that alert you to how many unread emails and social media posts you still have to see. Each notification is a distraction. Each notification takes you away from being present. Number 2, wear a wristwatch. How does that help? Before I started wearing a wristwatch, I used to pick up my device about 25 to 40 times a day just to see what time it is. And then I would be lost in the virtual vortex of information, essentially losing track of time. Quite ironic, isn't it? Number 3, get an alarm clock. We check our device the last thing before we go to bed just to make sure that the alarm is set right. And then we go online and end up doom scrolling the internet for several hours, procrastinating sleep. Our brain gets put in a hyper arousal mode when it actually needs to start winding down. Number 4, embrace boredom. Why does our hand instinctively reach for a device when we come to a halt at the stop sign? Because in that moment, we are escaping boredom. Boredom has become unbearable. The next time you experience the twitch of the hand to reach for the device, pause and think, why am I reaching for my device right now? Am I bored? Am I looking for distraction? Am I looking for entertainment? What am I escaping from? Think about the craving. Let the craving pass. Rid yourself of guilt or judgment. Put the device back down and then turn your attention to whatever it was that you were escaping from and engage with that task or person. Number 5. Make your devices harder to reach. We must weaken our robotic response to reach for the device by placing them in desk drawers for 15 minutes interval, by trying to work without interruptions for at least 15 to 20 minutes, and sometimes by leaving the devices in the car while we enjoy a meal at the restaurant. Number 6, make your devices boring and unappealing. Use them as tools, not as 24/7 source of distraction or entertainment. Delete social media applications and access social media through web browsers when needed. We might feel deprived to begin with, but we must replace that feeling of being deprived with the feeling of pride in being fully present, fully mindful, fully intentional, pride in curing the twitch of our hand, pride in curing this unspoken addiction that impacts all of us. Remember Riley, the 17-year-old young lady with the bed sore? It later turned out that her bed sore was in fact 6 inches deep underneath her skin and had to be surgically resected. The next time I met Riley, I saw tears again, but they were tears of joy. And they were Riley's, not her mother's. Riley has Ungrip Devices and is learning to grip life. Are you ready to experience what that feels like? Are you ready to reclaim your time and attention? Are you ready to reconnect with health, joy, and efficiency? There's a lot of work that needs to be done. And we have no time to lose. We must begin today. But first, we have to create the right environment for that to happen. So if you have not already done so, please go ahead and turn off your devices, place them in the bags, and put the bags underneath your seats. This might be your beginning of lifelong digital wellness. When we intentionally practice putting our devices away for 15 to 20 minutes a day, we might notice that the colors are brighter, the sounds are sharper, the words are clearer, heart rate slows down, brain fog lifts, breathing slows down. You might not experience all of that today. So for today, just look around you. Look at the faces of people around you. Make eye contact, give them a smile, and wonder what might their story be. What might we learn from someone else today? What might we learn in our time together today, and take it all in. With me, one deep inhale and exhale. One more time, deep inhale and exhale. Fully present, fully mindful, fully intentional. Let's ungrip devices and grip life. Namaste.